Today's guest strategically navigated his career transition. And as you listen to this episode, you might be thinking, I want to do that too. And the last thing I want to do is make a mistake. I've got something to help you before we get to today's episode. It is my free guide. It is called 5 Mistakes Mid-Career Professionals Make and Need to Stop Doing. In this guide, you're going to learn 5 key derailers that may be blocking your progress between where you are and where you want to be. You can get this free guide by visiting my website, johnneral.com. You can check the show notes, or you can get it in the featured section of my LinkedIn profile. Let me help you start building your mid-career GPS to whatever is next right now. Have you ever felt that you had enough with your job and knew it was time for a change? And then you thought, all right, what's that going to be? Navigating a career transition does not have to be complicated. And that change can simply happen by being open to a conversation or a new opportunity. Today, you will meet Jason Mack. He will share how he took a career in hospitality and leveraged it into an even more amazing career that truly aligns with his values. And he'll share some helpful tips on how you can leverage your skills too to find your next advancement opportunity. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. This is episode 188 of the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Neral, and I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have by using my proven 4-step formula. Today's conversation is about how to successfully navigate a career transition. And after a 20-year career in hotel management and operations, Jason Mack wanted more work-life balance and a job that would have a greater purpose. Jason's going to share his amazing career trajectory and the one thing he did that helped him navigate his mid-career GPS to his current position. This is a conversation about knowing what you want, being open to new experiences and opportunities, how to clearly communicate your value, and finding your greater purpose that more specifically aligns to your next position. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Jason Mack.
Hi, I'm Jason Mack. I have the pleasure of serving as Director of Patient Experience for the James Comprehensive Cancer Center at Ohio State University.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of that. But Jason, what was the one thing that you would say you really appreciated or enjoyed about working in the hotel industry?
It was just the general chaos of every single day. No 2 days were the same. I was constantly challenged, both interpersonally and intellectually, on every day. And there was always a new opportunity for me to learn something new and to file, those learnings away in such a way. So it was just very stimulating work. And I am just naturally very much a people person. I enjoy being around and learning more about individuals. And so it gave me a real broad exposure to people from a lot of different backgrounds.
In your experience, did you work for one of the big hotel chains, or was it more of a local boutique type hotel?
So kind of a combination of both. I have worked for Marriott, Hilton, and Starwood hotels over the course of my career. Everything from a 1,600 room, what we call a big box hotel in a downtown setting, to a 135 room boutique luxury hotel.
Yeah. And so for all of us who have done work travel and personal travel, we know that we go into a hotel, we want that process to be seamless. There's certain things we expect. You as the manager, the representative at the hotel can never have a bad day when you're in customer service, because it's a limited amount of experience you get with a customer usually, unless they're repeat customers. And so I can appreciate how the variety of things you got to do and the chaos, as you mentioned, can be very energizing and fulfilling. So here's the question. What changed?
Well, I have three young boys at home. Well, not so young anymore. And so life has a way of sort of helping you frame priorities. And, I've always wanted to pursue a graduate degree, but the hotel industry, I would say roughly half of my peers may have been just high school graduates. And so there was really no incentive there. Um, and so I spent the better part of about 10 years sort of waffling back and forth as to, is this something I could see myself doing into retirement? And the answer I kept coming back to was no. But, the follow-up question to myself was always, well, then what? Because, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the hotel industry and the roles within. So my role as a general manager was sort of jack of all trades and master of none, from an outsider or recruiter standpoint. And so I was, it was very difficult for me to get looks, when I'd have a bad week, and I would do like most people do, jump online and see what's out there. And so I spent the better part of a decade sort of waffling back and forth as to, okay, what am I really good at? And what are the skills that I believe will be transferable and useful and appreciated by a future employer? So all that to say, you're building, I guess, towards the catalyst or the question here, what was that moment? Is that
We're going to go there. Yeah. What was that moment that kind of changed or pivoted everything for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, as you mentioned before, there's a lot of expectations with hotel guests. When they come in, they expect certain things. And over the years, as you had pointed out, you have to be on stage at all times. You can't have a bad day. And so, and most people can't necessarily point to a moment in their lives where they made the decision to, this is the moment in which I'm going to find something different or wither on the vine. And so I vividly remember we were on a sold out weekend or an oversold Friday, and I had a volleyball mom standing in front of me waiting to check in. And this particular individual had booked a room with one bed, but was screaming at me at the top of her lungs that I was going to accommodate her with a room with two beds. And I just simply couldn't do it. I mean, it's not as if I was unwilling. I just simply couldn't do it.
Sure.
And so that was the moment in which I kind of walked away from the situation to try to decompress and just said to myself, I just can't get up and do this every day. My life has to have some more meaning. I have more to give.
And when you have that moment and that experience, and you have found yourself waffling and you're kind of shopping online for jobs and looking to see what's there, talk to us a little bit about what that mental process or that thought process was for you in terms of, you know, when would you find a new job? What was it going to be? Were your skills transferable? What was some of that mindset like for you at the time?
Well, I was able to. I worked with an individual who helped me do an assessment, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember the name of it right now. It will come to me. And the assessment was basically, what are you good at? What skills do you really excel at? And rather than in focusing on, too often people are so concerned about, well, what are my weaknesses and how do I improve upon those? This individual helped me sort of understand, your weaknesses are your weaknesses, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't continue to focus on those, but let's identify what those strengths are. So I by nature am very analytical, and as I mentioned before, I really enjoy people. Entertaining in my personal life is one of my favorite things to do. I'm constantly popping around the kitchen, making sure people are happy, and so just genuine hospitality. And so how can I take these two things and apply it to a future where I will feel fulfilled on a day-to-day basis?
And what you just shared, Jason, I just want to acknowledge is so normal for mid-career professionals who are trying to figure out what's next. And for the people who listen to this podcast, it's something very relatable, right? Because they get to that point and they're like, okay, something's got to change. Something needs to be different. I can't keep doing this every single day. And so fast forwarding a little bit, so you're recognizing that there's a change. Where did you start looking for potential opportunities in your job search that may not have necessarily led you to the job where you are, but at least were exploring what that career pivot might have looked like?
Yeah, so sort of a, I guess, longer story here. Back in 2016, I was invited by a patient experience representative at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center to come and speak to a group of physicians and clinicians about what we were doing in hospitality. The hotel I was running at the time was twice awarded Marriott's full serve hotel of the year. And this individual just happened to stay at my property over a weekend and picked up the phone and called me on a Monday, which led to this presentation. And so, having that experience and challenging myself to speak to a group of very smart individuals, sort of gave me, or sort of planted the seed of, well, my mom's in healthcare. She's a retired nurse practitioner, and maybe that would have been a great opportunity for me when I was a young man, but time has passed me by, and so that sort of thing. And so went back to my hotel job and just continued to plug away. And back in 2021, I had an employee of mine who ended up becoming, over the years, a very dear friend. He passed away at age 61. And when his family came to town, I took on the role of, I'm going to be the counselor in residence here. I'm going to make I'm hurting myself inside, but I'm going to make these people feel so welcome here that all they remember is the experience. And after they left and sort of the dust settled and I was doing more reflecting, I thought to myself, well, I want to help people at their worst possible moment. That's what I want. That's what will fill my cup on a daily basis. And so, combining, I guess, those two stories, within a month of having that experience of losing a dear friend, I received a Google alert in my email, in my inbox. And I had forgotten that back in 2016, when I gave that presentation at the medical center, I put a Google alert out on the job of the man who invited me to speak. And so I saw that as a sign in the moment. I said, you know what? I'm just a dumb hotel guy. I'm going to go ahead and apply for this job and see what happens. And I'll just stop there.
So thank you for sharing that story with us. And one of the things that came up for me as I'm listening to you is you truly never know, right? You never know what experience, who comes into your life, what opportunity you take. And we've talked so much on the podcast about how one of the show up 6 strategies is about welcoming new opportunities, putting that Google alert in there, that all of a sudden one day out of the blue, that hits and you're like, oh, I'm going to take that as a sign. You did it with great intentionality. And so what was that interview experience like for you, especially going from a hospitality background to more of a patient experience? I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about what that interview process was like for you, and maybe some of the questions that might have given you a little bit of difficulty in terms of figuring out how to answer.
Yeah, certainly. And great question. The interview process itself was quite long. And as I think about how I approached that, friends, family. I was consulting in advance of these interviews, and
Sure.
looking for someone to just kind of pump me up a little bit. And I had made the comment earlier about being a dumb hotel guy, and so sort of shaking that mentality and embracing the concept of a cancer hospital is simply a hotel that no one wants to check into. But the same principles apply. It is about human connection. And really, in the patient experience world, I am not a clinician, but I really genuinely believe that the work that I do on a day-to-day basis at present has an impact on health outcomes. And so I went into the interview process with that mentality. Is I will outwork you, and I am a sponge for new knowledge and information. So the things that I don't know, I will learn. And so some of the difficulty with the interview process was I'm interviewing with clinicians, people that are classically trained in medicine. And so oftentimes there's a disconnect between what I'm saying and what they're hearing, and vice versa.
So that's really clear in terms of giving us that thought or that mindset going into the interview, knowing how you have to frame some answers or responses, or how you're going to interact, knowing that you're coming from a very people and heart-centric perspective, but also have a very robust background in using data. And at the same time, talking with clinicians who are coming from a completely different modality in that. What would you say, Jason, was the biggest objection that either you thought you were going to have by them offering you the job, or they might have had looking at you as an ideal candidate?
We circle back to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, one of the things, and this is like one of the topics on the podcast where we talk about interviews, we talk about it in terms of it's all about building a relationship. You have a story, you have a background, you have, what was it? You have like 20 years experience in hospitality before going, right? So you have 20 years of experience. That's a lot to unpack. Okay. like I wish the listeners could see it, but like your eyes got like really big and you started laughing with me on that, because it is.
Where do we begin?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack on that. And so when we think about how we tell our story, and we tell that story from a place of value and service, as the candidate, we're always coming at it as, I'm the best. I'm the one that's going to be able to help you. Here's what I'm going to be able to do for you. And one of the things that candidates often miss is figuring out how to address a potential objection or hurdle that might come up in the interview. So for me, with a 25-year career in education, as I was navigating out of the classroom, the objection I had to overcome was, how do you take a quote unquote classroom teacher and move them into a role, be it at the administrative level or the superintendent's office or with a nonprofit? Like, how do they get to see you in that role? And a lot of times our brains just default to the negative. And so we think, oh, they're not going to like this, or I shouldn't have answered the question that way. Right. And for many people who are navigating a career transition, one of the things that they miss is, what's the objection? What's the objection they might encounter from a committee member, someone on the interview panel, a hiring manager in particular? And a lot of times that objection can come from our own insecurities or biases about how well we're best suited for the job. So to rephrase the question, like for you, was there something you felt like you needed to be a little stronger at in terms of telling your story? Or perhaps another way to phrase it would be, did you feel like there was an identifiable gap based on your experience that they might think was, but you knew was not?
Yeah, sure. And I appreciate you reframing that. As I sort of reflect on that, I would say the biggest objection that I encountered, obviously not out loud, I say obviously, it wasn't as blunt as this is my objection, just underlying comments and the line of questioning around, well, you're not a clinician and you've never worked in a healthcare setting. So what type of things can a hotel, yeah, you understand Midwestern hospitality and you know how to be nice to people. But what can you bring to the table here that's going to help us move the needle? Because by the way, we're really smart people.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started to tie in some of the analytics.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's again similarities. We survey people in the hotel industry, and healthcare surveys people. Probably oversaturate. There's oversaturation in that, but and so helping them understand that we also collect data, and I was particularly good at slicing and dicing that data and then developing action plans based on what the trend lines were telling me. And so that line of thinking really spoke to a lot of the executive leaders that I met with, because the volumes are 10 times what they were in a particular hotel property. So the ability to apply that line of thinking to a broader scale.
There was something you said in your answer. I'm going to guess here, you probably didn't intentionally say it this way, but I'm going to call it out. So when we're interviewing for jobs, we as the job candidate can sometimes get intimidated if we don't feel like we're smart enough. And one of the things that you shared with us, I appreciate so much, Jason, was that you pivoted to simply say, well, here's where I am smart. Here's what I know. Here's where I'm the expert in this line of work. And here's how that's going to help you. So we call it bridging the gap. You bridge the gap between a potential concern, hesitation, or objection that positions you very strategically in the interview, because now they can see you in that role. They see that skill or knowledge that you have getting transferred into their arena. Is that fair?
Oh, most definitely. And
Okay.
that was sort of the reaction that I would get when I would bring up that, connection to analytics, was you could see in the facial expressions, oh, yes, this could be useful to us.
Yeah, really, really good. And so you do this work today. Kind of sum up for us a little bit about what your current position and your current work looks like today.
Sure. So I support a team of about 130 full-time associates, and really falls into 4 different buckets of work. One being the public space component, so the friendly faces that you see when you enter a hospital through the front doors, the arrival experience. I also support a group of individuals called patient advocates. Those folks round floor to floor and make connections with patients and families and try to bridge the gap between clinical speak and human speak, if that's probably the best, most concise way I can put that. I also support volunteer services, and then we have a housing program with the medical center that we partner with a local hotel. And so that obviously was a very natural fit for me, that bucket in particular.
Sure. Yeah. Jason, there's no question that the work you get to do today is meaningful and needed. And you certainly feel like and sound like you found your sweet spot right now at mid-career, which is a very envious position in that regard. So it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who truly kind of has found really fulfilling work for them at mid-career. And I know the people who are listening are picking up on that as well. For the person who's listening that is feeling a little frustrated or disconcerted in their job search in making their career pivot, What tip or advice would you have for them to help them successfully navigate to whatever is next in their career?
Well, it sounds super cliche, but like, don't ignore the signs. As we've noted here, the Google alert and forgetting about that. And then, that coming at a very serendipitous time in my life. Trust the signs. And then the other thing that I learned over the 10 years of sort of putting out feelers here and there and everywhere is, if you see a job and it looks appealing to you, really stop and consider, 10 years from now, could you see yourself doing that job? And I think that's where I was very fortunate to have been selective. It took me 10 years, but I was very selective. And so just trust the process, I guess, would be net the best advice.
You've given us some great tips and suggestions today, and I appreciate you so much about sharing your story. At the end of the day, what's the one thing that you're most grateful for about the work you get to do?
So there's a phrase on my wall at work that I borrowed from someone, and I've had plastered on the wall now. And it's a good reminder for me that a day of work for you is a life event for our guest. And so it's had a way of framing perspective on life that when I'm walking in and I'm upset about what's happened over the course of the morning, because I've got 3 boys at home. And so, 6 days a week, there's always something that jumps off in the morning. But as I'm walking in, I'm able to shake whatever it is that's troubling me, because the majority of the people that I will interact with that day have it much worse than I have it.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's truly heartfelt and meaningful. So thank you. Jason, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today and sharing with us about how you've been able to transfer skills and navigate your career pivot. If somebody's interested in connecting with you further or learning more about the work that you specifically do, where's a great place for people to connect with you?
I can be reached on LinkedIn, Jason Mack. Search me up and send me a message. I'd be delighted to connect and lend my help wherever I can.
Great. I will make sure that link is in the show notes. Jason Mack, thank you so very much for spending some time with us today on the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
All right, everybody. You got an opportunity today to hear an amazing career transformation story from somebody who had a 20-year experience in one industry and leveraged their talents and expertise into something else. What does that look like for you? When you think about whatever is next for you and your career and navigating your mid-career GPS to whatever is next, what we want to leave with you today is this. Think about your skills. Think about the things you do on a daily basis that you are exceptional at doing, and see if there is a way to take that skill set and transfer that to another organization or industry so you can find a job you love or pivot somewhere internally and redefine the job you already have. So until next time, my friends, remember this. We build our mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnerrell.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.